All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of What Are We Doing? I hope lockdown's treating you well. I'm up and down with it, to be honest. The beard's looking pretty good, don't it? My lockdown beard's coming on nicely. Anyway, let's get started. So, as I said in the last post, there are numerous ways to go about classifying training. In my opinion, the labels we put on things are largely unimportant. All right, what's important is that we as coaches have a clear idea of what we want to achieve and how that impacts on our athletes. All right, as I said, in very broad strokes, each of the three energy classifications, energy systems, CP, anaerobic, and aerobic, can be developed either power or capacity. And if you develop capacity, you're giving that system more energy. If you develop power, you're allowing or developing that system to deliver that energy faster. All right. And it's important that we understand that capacity has to therefore be built before power. So we must always train capacity before we train power. So if we think about four phases of training, it doesn't matter what they are, whether it's in your cycle or in your season or whether it's just a little block of 4 weeks, it doesn't matter. The first phase of that little block, we need to focus, in my opinion, predominantly on aerobic capacity. A little bit of CP work can be carried out the whole way through. Then in the second phase, we want to think about adding anaerobic capacity. All right. Third phase, we start to build in the power, aerobic power, and then finishing off with some anaerobic power. That's the way I think we should be thinking about putting together our systems. All right. Now, if the weight that you put on each, so how long you spend in phase one or phase two or phase three, depends on you. It depends on what you want to achieve from your program. It depends on the athletes you have in your program. It depends on the events that those athletes want to race, and it depends on your coaching philosophy. So you have to develop a coaching philosophy, and then this all fits in under that umbrella. All right, but again, in my opinion, it's important that we know what we're doing. All right, and again, when it comes to events, we don't really have in swimming a pure sprint event. We don't have an event that is just power. All right, the closer it gets to 50 free. But again, strictest sense of the words, it needs more than just anaerobic power. It needs more than just that CP system. All right, you have to develop the whole system. So I put this together, again, standing on the shoulders of giants, really, pulling together as much information from different sources as I could possibly get. And again, it's open to interpretation and it is broad strokes. But if you're looking to have guys training for the 1500, the 800, the vast majority of their work is aerobic power, right? But in order for them to develop aerobic power, they've got to have the aerobic capacity built first. Okay, there's a little bit of anaerobic capacity and a little bit of anaerobic power involved in those races, but not a lot. They're still there though. And as you move down distance, you get down to the 50 and the 1. You can see at the bottom there, the 50 and the 1 are predominantly anaerobic power. But in order to develop anaerobic power, you've got to develop anaerobic capacity first. Then there's a little bit of aerobic power. And again, if you want that aerobic power to kick in, you've got to have the capacity to allow you to deliver that. All right, so no matter which event, no matter how long or short those events are, you've got to develop the capacity to allow you to deliver on the power, all right, that allows you to swim fast. Okay, now the combinations of the muscle fibers and the energy conversion systems produce our training intensity zones. All right, so how we put together our actual sets, whether it's aerobic maintenance, aerobic development, VO2 max, lactate tolerance, lactate production, whatever you want to call it. But no matter what terminology you use or how you measure them, it's important that you understand that there's always kind of a blurring of the lines between, you don't have a VO2 max that's all VO2 max and then it stops and becomes something else. It kind of merges through things, okay? That merging will be different for every athlete, and it might well be different for the same athlete from one day to the next. So how do we as coaches ensure that what we're writing is delivering what we think it's delivering for the athletes? Now, I'm sure there are really fancy ways of doing it. I coach in a very small provincial program with no money. So I have to find different ways to do things and trying to find ways that are easy or cheap that we can do pretty simply. Okay, so I'm lucky that we have heart rate monitors that give me sort of this information. And this is me. This is not one of my athletes. I went for a run yesterday. It's awful. But it tells me how long I spent in each of those heart rate zones. All right. Now, Polar hardwires these things, so the colors don't match with the colors that I use. I have toyed around with changing the colors, but it got too awkward. So you've got 50% of max heart rate, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. As you can see there, I pretty much tapped out. Those colors, the 90% of max heart rate, the red zone at the top, whenever we go on to the next page, for most of our athletes, that replicates somewhere around 10 to 20 beats below max. All right, that 90% is 10 to 20 beats below max. And you can see when we go on to the next slide that that's in the aerobic end of things still, okay? So there are lots of ways to measure this stuff, and these are just a few ideas, okay? So let's see how we go. So here we have the two halves, predominantly aerobic on that side, predominantly anaerobic on that side, okay? And we got capacity, power, capacity. Now, the line underneath is ballpark. Not specific because it's different for everybody, but ballpark. If we want to work in terms of aerobic capacity, it's a big range. You've got from more than 50 beats below max up to 20 beats below max. It's still aerobic capacity. 20 beats below max on that other chart may well be red for some of your athletes, and it's still aerobic power, or aerobic capacity, sorry. And it's just blurring that line. It's starting to move into the aerobic power area. All right, 10 to 20 beats below max, probably aerobic power. All right, you're probably looking at some sort of race pace VO2 max kind of area there. Okay, then up at the other end, anaerobically, it's going to be not the 10 beats below max. And when you get to the very end, it's not really applicable. All right, but that's one of the ways. Like I said, I'm very lucky. We get that live feed on it. And that's kind of where these things fit in. So like I said, that power is VO2 max. And we just kind of match them up. We just kind of go, right, well, what do we want to try to achieve? Aerobic capacity is regen, aerobic maintenance, aerobic development, aerobic overload, and some threshold work. And all of that is on the heart rates, orange and below-ish. All right, you just have to know your athletes. The other way we look at it is in terms of stroke rates. Now, stroke rates are different for everybody. So these are, again, ballpark. All right, but as a very rough guide, if we look at these lines down here, if we go right, we want to have people working aerobic power, anaerobic power, and we want them doing backstroke. Their stroke rate's going to be in around 43, 44, 45, something like that. All right, if you're working aerobic capacity, stroke rate's going to be in 23, 24 for backstroke, 22, 23 freestyle, 17 on breaststroke. All right, and it's very quick and easy. We can just go in with our stopwatches and we can just have a look at them. All right, we can be on the ball with it. It's reasonably simple. The next one is obviously lactates. I don't have the capacity to test lactates, but that's more or less where they would fit in. So we got lactate 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 16. Again, different for everybody, but it's in that sort of ballpark. So if you're looking at going somewhere around the crossover between threshold and power, so in around anaerobic power, aerobic power, You're going to be a lactate 8, somewhere like that, probably. All right. This is the whole thing kind of put together. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. We try to make sure that what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to deliver, is what we're actually delivering. The race distances in the middle, again, it's all very individual, very personalized, but it's there for ballpark. All right, it's an idea, really, more than anything else. And at the bottom, the muscle fiber recruitment and the fuel source. As you can see, the aerobic oxidative and the aerobic glycogen is there the whole way through. Aerobic glycogen in here and anaerobic in there. Okay. Anyway, so that's kind of the way I try to put things together. I try to rationalize what we do in my head. It may or may not be right. It may or may not be 100% accurate. Like I said, I'm not a sports scientist, but it makes sense in my head. I think that, like I said, that's part of the important bit. You've got to make sure that it makes sense to you, and that you understand what it is you're trying to achieve. So yeah, that's kind of all I got today. I think I've rattled on long enough. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button or the dislike button if you really feel the need. And share. Check out the WordPress blog post as well over there. It's some similar information on there. But check it out and keep safe. Stay home. Hopefully we'll be back in the water before too long. See ya.